Our first speaker this morning will be John Boykin from Clipped. John, please help me welcome you to the stage.
Thanks very much. Not that big a room, and I got a big voice. So, good morning, welcome everyone. It's always a pleasure as well as a privilege to be in a room with a bunch of PGA members and associates. This is my 43rd year as a PGA member, and it's always just been a blessing. We're going to talk to you a little bit this morning about a technology platform, Clipped. It's not an acronym, it's a word that came from a coin that the two co-founders decided to use to name this technology platform. The two co-founders are a couple of guys based in London, England, that played college golf at Oxford University, had a passion for the game, had success in business and aggregating technology. They decided to take their passion for golf and their expertise and put it into a business that fulfilled a need. And the need was to have the ability for you as coaches to become more organized and therefore more efficient with your time. I think you're going to find it fascinating as to how Clipped as a platform achieves its goals of helping you sort of make that upgrade in your business life. It's rare that we get a PhD that comes and talks to golf professionals. Well, we brought all the way from London Dr. Chris Robertson, who's our chief data scientist for Clipped. And so at this time, I want to ask, first of all, before that, let me say, we're also very pleased and privileged to be a partner with the Southern Texas PGA section. We partnered with 8 PGA sections this year. We're going to grow that to 10 or 11 next year. And as all of us know sitting in this room, if you want to get something built in the game and business of golf in this country, the best way to do it is through sections and chapters, because we're the folks that get it done. And so again, appreciate you being here, appreciate the opportunity to partner with the section. And now I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Chris Robertson, who also played college golf, but at competing Cambridge University. So a good player, but a data scientist with a unique perspective on how to aggregate data and present it in such a way that's a benefit to all of you in the room. So we hope you'll ask questions. We hope you'll kind of get engaged in what Chris is showing you, and then if not during this presentation, afterwards or at lunch or whatever, please ask us. We want you to learn more about it, and hopefully we learn more about you. So without further ado, Dr. Chris Robertson. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that intro, JB, and good morning, everyone. As JB said, my name is Chris, and I'm the Chief Data Scientist at Clipped. So what that means is me and my team are basically responsible for building out the algorithms and the models which sit behind the analytics and visuals that you'll see in the platform today. In terms of what I want to go through with you this morning, I've got a few slides just to kind of explain what we do at Clipped, how we do that, and then sort of most importantly, why we do that and why we think that that's the features that will show you are particularly useful for you as coaches, and we think will help you do your jobs more efficiently and more effectively. But so to start off with, as JB said, what we are, we're a technology company where our main objective is to help accelerate the learning process. So we're not a robo-coach, we're not trying to tell people how to swing the club, how to hit the ball. We want to help you as coaches, help your players get better faster by giving you an improved understanding of exactly how they play the game and what really drives performance for them. And how we do that is through 3 clear steps. The first of these is aggregate. It's really about bringing all of the technologies that you already use and bringing all that data into one place, effectively giving you a 360-degree view of your players. So we're completely agnostic to the origin of that data. It can be from launch monitors, it can be from onboard GPS systems, it can be from simulators, health data, wherever. We want to integrate with that technology and bring it to one place. And that already, as the first step, is hugely valuable for the coaches many coaches that we've been working with in a collaborative effort to build this platform. You can see an example of that with one of those coaches, Kevin Sprecher, saying just how valuable that aggregation step is for him, using Clipped to aggregate all the data for his players who play throughout the world into one place, greatly improves the efficiency of his coaching. The second step is about analyzing that data. So this is really where a lot of my work is focused. And the way that I like to think about this is essentially establishing a new layer of intelligence which sits on top of all the data that we've aggregated. And essentially we want that to be greater than the sum of its parts. So if you have a player who has, for example, launch monitor data, they have data from the course, they have health data, we want to be able to bring that into one place and create a coherent narrative which builds out that 360-degree view of the player and really enhances what you know about them and how they play the game. So really the purpose of this step is about building enhanced clarity and objective understanding of exactly how a player plays the game. And before we get into the third step, I thought it was worth just spending a little bit more time looking at this. Obviously this is the focus of my work, and it really is the language of Clift. So I want to make sure that everyone understands exactly what goes into this particular step of the process. And to start off with, I want to go through two of our core metrics. They are shot quality and player quality. So shot quality is our objective assessment of the standard of a golf shot. So that's measured on a scale between 0 and 200. 0 essentially represents the worst shot that could be hit in a given scenario. So you think, for example, hitting the ball out of bounds off the tee. 200 represents essentially the perfect shot in a given context. So there you can think a hole in one, a full shot from the middle of the fairway, something like that. And then right in the middle of that is 100, which essentially represents the standard of a shot that we expect from a tour player. So if you hit a shot that is better than that standard, then you get rewarded with a shot quality above 100. If it's worse, then you get a shot quality that's below 100. So in that sense, it's kind of analogous to essentially that 0 mark when you look at tour strokes gained, for instance. We can measure that shot quality no matter where that shot is hit. So it can be in a round, in a practice event, a tournament. It can be in a launch monitor test, in a drill. Wherever we can objectively measure the result of a shot, we can assign a shot quality to it. And what that means is we can take all of that information and get an accurate picture of exactly how good a player is in any given area of the game. And that's where player quality comes in. It's essentially our algorithmically driven view of a player's skill level or ability level in a given area of the game. So we have an example of that on the left of that slide there, right for you guys, where we're looking at Dustin Johnson. So he, for example, has an off-the-tee player quality of 113, approach of 112, around the green of 105, and putting of 104. And so straight away what we can understand from that is his strengths lie in his off-the-tee ability and his approach game. He's obviously still a very good player, around the green and putting. It's still above 100, it's better than the average tour player, but his strengths certainly lie in those other two areas of the game. And we can take that and go even more granular. We can look at, for instance, around the green play from a bunker, from the rough, from the fairway, short approach shots, long approach shots. However we want to slice and dice the data, we can do that, and we can obtain an accurate skill level or an assessment of skill level using player quality. We can very easily go the other way, go up to the total level. Again, for Dustin Johnson, that's at 100. The great thing about player quality is it's updated with every single shot that a player hits, no matter whether that's in practice or in a round. So that means we can easily wind back the clock and get an understanding of how a player's play has evolved through time. Maybe you want to go back and see when they were playing particularly well, and you want to understand what the signature of that was. It's very easy through the lens of player quality. I just want to explain a little bit about shot quality, just to make sure everyone's aware exactly what kind of context we're building into this metric. The best way to do that is through a couple of examples. And this example here is at the 18th at Sunningdale Old, so it's a 423-yard par 4. We've got two scenarios with essentially identical tee shots in the sense that they're hit from the back tee into the middle of the fairway, 288 yards, leaving 135 yards to the flag. If we look at that from a strokes gained perspective, we get plus 0.16 in terms of strokes gained off the tee. But in actual fact, these two scenarios are different in the sense that they're hit in very different conditions. The shot on the left is played in the summer, it's nice and warm, there's very little wind. The shot on the right is played in heavy showers, it's much cooler, and there's a strong wind. So intuitively, we understand that those conditions on the right are much more difficult than conditions on the left. And strokes gained obviously isn't able to capture that difference. But using the amount of data that we have, we can leverage that through machine learning to work out exactly how much more difficult the shot on the right is than the shot on the left, and thereby award a higher shot quality score for the shot on the right, 117, versus 109 for the shot on the left. Similarly, we can build in additional context in terms of exactly what the golfer is seeing over a particular shot. So here we have another example at the 15th hole at Eastlake. which is I think a 200-yard par 3 over water to a finish of the green. Both of these shots, again, are identical in terms of the starting and the end position. They hit to about 30 feet on the green. The scenario on the right is as the hole plays currently. The scenario on the left, essentially what we've done is we've got this hypothetical 15th hole where we've completely removed the hazard. And again, we understand that the shot on the right is more difficult because you're penalized much more heavily for a poor shot than the shot on the left. And again, strokes gained isn't able to distinguish between those things, but shot quality is awarding a shot quality of 137 for the shot on the right and 124 for the shot on the left. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the context that we're building into this metric, and what this really means for you as coaches is if you're looking through the platform at one of your players and you're sort of going through a round to try and figure out exactly what that looks like for a player, you can be confident that this context is built in. You don't have to do the usual sort of mental gymnastics to work out, okay, this round was played in really nice conditions, this round was played in howling winds. That context is already built in, so you can actually see the evolution of a round and sort of an accurate picture of how good those individual shots were. And that brings me to the third and final step of what we do, and this is about action. So this is a clear path to performance gains. This is about things like what's going well for a player, what's not going so well, what things should they be focusing on, how much opportunity is there to get better in a particular area of the game, how important is a particular area of the game to how they score. And it's really providing a unique set of recommendations that's completely bespoke to the player that you as coaches can use as support when you're looking at things like building out a practice plan for a player. We've got an example of how one of the coaches that we're working with, Ryan Potter, is the associate head coach at Wake Forest Women's Golf, how he uses a particular area of the platform called What to Work On, which I'll demo for you in a little bit, to help get some of his players, some of his top players to the next level, sort of eke out those incremental gains by making sure that what they're practicing, what they're working on is relevant to them and improve that efficiency of that relationship. And just to finish the presentation part of this talk, I just wanted to pull out this visual because I think it encapsulates what we do as a platform quite well in sort of one visual. Essentially what we're doing is we're helping close the feedback loop. So we can take, for example, data from performance on the course to accurately understand exactly what happened in that round. We can use that to help direct practice through you as coaches with the players. We can then evaluate those practice sessions and use that to work out how the players should be playing the next time they go out on the course. And this is really all underpinned by two key parts. We obviously have the machine intelligence from the platform itself, but that doesn't go without the human insights that you get from the coach, the knowing and the understanding of the player, and the expertise to actually take that and put it into practice for the player to make sure that they can effectively make that change. So that's it in terms of the presentation part of the talk. Now what I want to do is I want to pull up the platform and give you guys a bit of a sort of brief overview of some of the key features that we think are particularly relevant for you as coaches. So I'm just going to head over to the computer and pull that up now. Okay. So, what we have here is I've logged into the platform as one of my colleagues, Charlie Quick, who's our head of business development. He's got a coach account, he's connected with a number of different players, so they thought this was a good opportunity to demo his platform, his account, sorry, so you get an idea of what these features that we think are particularly useful for you as coaches. So, when we log into the platform, the first sort of page that we're greeted with is this activity feed. And so what we have here is something that you probably see in other social media platforms, things like Strava. In the center of the page, we've got a scrolling feed of activities. If I scroll through this, you can see we've got various different types of activities. We've got tests, we've got rounds, we've got lessons, range sessions, stuff like that. And this is all from players who have Charlie listed as their coach within the platform. Okay, so these are all activities that they've added themselves. As a coach, what Charlie can also do is he can go up to the top right of the platform here, click on this plus icon, and go to this add activity here. What that does is that brings up this add manual activity menu. So this is particularly useful for things like, for example, if Charlie had a lesson with one of his players recently, you can go into this, you can select lesson, you can select this drop-down menu, deselect himself. It's not about a lesson for him in terms of his activity. You can scroll down and find the player who's had a lesson with. So say, for example, he had a lesson with Josh Coles. You can select that, and now this activity is going to belong to Josh. And he can add all the different types of content that he wants in order to build out the context of that particular lesson. So you can have a title, you can put sort of date and time, you can have a description, so this might be particular swing thoughts or fields that we're working on during the lesson. So again, building out the context of that activity, adding a location, duration, tagging it with a particular part of the game. So if it was on the range, it might be off the tee and approach. If it was on the putting green, we can tag that with putting. And you can even add photos and videos. So that might be photos and videos from the actual lesson or other instructional content that he thinks is going to be particularly useful for Josh further down the line so that we can both reflect on that at some point. So in that way, this almost operates kind of as a digital locker, right? Me and Josh, or Charlie and Josh, with that coach and player relationship, can add these activities to the feed and then reflect on it later or further down the line if they need to. So this is great for Charlie as a coach to be able to scroll through this feed and get an idea of what his players have been up to, what types of activities they've been engaging with, how well they've been playing in all the rounds that they've been playing. If he wants a slightly sort of higher level overall picture of how his players are playing, he can go to the team dashboard. So you can navigate to that using the teams and the menu up there. And this brings us to our team dashboard. And we can organize all of our players into different teams if we think that that's required. And what this does is it brings up all of your players in this card view as the default. So here what we have is all of the players in this team clip, as Charlie's called it, which is a bunch of our colleagues. We've got the player qualities for each of these players, so an idea of how good they are in different areas of the game at this point in time. We go to sort of relatively straightforward activity monitoring here in terms of the number of on-course and off-course activities they've been engaging with over the last month. And we can even switch between this view and what we call our team heat map, which lists all of those players. It lists their player qualities in each of the areas of the game, but it also gives an indication of whether that's trending in a positive direction or trending in a negative direction. We can toggle between different durations. We can look at 5 rounds, as it is at the moment. We can look at 10 rounds, 15 rounds, and 20 rounds. It's giving us an idea of not only how those players are playing at the moment, but what's been happening in sort of recent rounds in terms of those trends. So, as an example, David Ford here on the top, who's our head of sales. I know that he's been struggling a little bit with his driver recently. If we look at the sort of last 10 rounds, what we can see is that his off-the-tee player quality has dropped by 11 on that scale in the last 10 rounds. So maybe there's something going on with that. So as his coach, what I can do is very easily navigate to his profile, just by clicking his name there, and I can go into his performance dashboard. And this is where I would start to do some of that investigation, trying to figure out what's going on before I reach out to him and schedule a lesson, or sort of figure out, from his perspective, what exactly is going on. So we can obviously go into lots of detail within his profile. I'm not going to do that today, but what I wanted to just touch on was something that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, was our what to work on page. So hopefully just navigate to that for David Ford. And essentially what this page is this is giving us a unique set of recommendations that are completely bespoke to him as a player, based on the sort of hard data that we have available for him. So what we see here on the left is at the top our importance to scoring green, which gives an indication for the 4 categories how much influence performance in each of those categories influences his ability to score. So for example, when he plays well in terms of his approach play, does that lead to better scores? When he plays poorly in approach, does that lead to worse scores? What we can see by this number here is that out of all 4 categories, that is the case. It's the most influential in terms of how he scores, and that's completely bespoke to him. And we do the same thing across a number of different skill areas for these players, and they're broken up into individual cards down the left hand here. So we can see here, for example, off the tee driver, long approach shots outside of 180 yards plus, around the green from the rough and so on. And so what this pane is doing on the left is it's giving you a priority list essentially, based on the objective data that we have for David Ford. What is at the top of the priority list? And for him, as we might expect, based on the trends that we saw earlier, it's about velocity and it's driver specifically. That's what we think, based on the data, requires the most focus for him. obviously, what we want in terms of how this would be used by you as coaches is you'd be able to come into this page and get an idea of what we think, what the data says requires the most focus. What we want is you to be able to use your expertise, your understanding of the player and the game, to be able to use that to sort of to build out a practice plan, essentially, to direct that practice through the support of the objective data. So that was it in terms of the demo. Hopefully that gave you a bit of an idea of sort of how the platform works, and obviously a lot more information within that. But the great thing about it is you can go into that level of detail, or even say at sort of that high level, as I've demonstrated today, and still glean quite a lot of information about your players. So I think I'll hand back over to John.
Thank you very much, Chris. Hopefully, what this done is it's given you kind of a look behind the curtain at not only how Chris and the team, and by the way, this team is more than 40 full-time people in London. This is a company that is stretched tremendously to develop, I guess, what a lot of us would call the back of the house part of this process, which is heavily involved in the data science world. I have rarely in an almost 50-year career used the term game changer. Things like when we moved from steel to graphite, and when we moved from persimmon to now the composite heads, game changers. I know when video first came into teaching, game changer. This is a game changer. To give you an example of where we have this platform and where it's being used, the IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida, most of us know about it. All 175 students there in their golf program are using Clipped. Georgia Tech men's golf team is using Clipped. The Sea Island Performance Center, Craig Allen, who runs that, he was an early adopter, and all their coaches, Justin Parsons, and a number of those people are all using it. And we have what we call an innovation team. Of all the people I've worked with in my career, Clipped is the most collaborative group of people we've ever been with. Clipped has reached out through a network of people. We used to use the term Rolodex, but younger, you're going to use network. We reached out through a network of people, and we created an innovation council of some PGA professionals. One of those is right here in your section. And I'm going to ask him to come up and talk a little bit about Clipped and how he has seen it develop and used. So I'd like you to welcome Derek Cooper to the mic.
Thank you. Chris, I thought that was a great demonstration of the platform. I was introduced to Clip about 18 months ago when they were first starting to put the platform together. Over the years, I've seen a lot of new technologies come to market, and the problem that I've always had personally is that the innovators tend to come in with, look at this new technology we have, here it is for you, now you go figure out how to use it and help your students. And the refreshing thing about Clipped is they've got it exactly the opposite way around. Yes, they have a platform, but they've had a lot of coaches involved very early on, asking them, how can we change the platform to better serve you as the coach so you can better serve your students to get better faster? And that's been very refreshing, and that's why you see the product that you do today. From a user perspective, I can appreciate when you look at stuff like this, because I know the first time I looked at it, it was like, oh, that's a lot of data. How are my average students going to be able to use this? The great thing with it is that you can go as deep or as shallow as you want with it. You can go deep for your elite players, and you can keep it pretty shallow for your less elite players if you prefer to do that. The other things that I really like about it too is the fact that I feel as an industry, too often we have students come along for a lesson, we ask them, do they understand what we've worked on today? This is what I'd like you to go do, and then they're off on their own in the wilderness, and we have no idea whether they are doing what we asked them to do, how accurately they're doing it, how often they're doing it. What the Clip platform is going to allow us to do is to be able to assign practice plans to students and then track that practice. So the students will be able to do the practice plans, enter their results in the platform, and we'll be able to see the results they're getting in their practice. So I believe it's going to be much easier for us to then keep them on track and keep it moving forward. So a couple of the elements that I like I just outlined, especially like the stuff down the bottom with the what to work on in that lower left-hand corner. The thing I found interesting is that what is the weakest in the student's game is not always the thing that's going to change their scores the most. And
we don't then have to interpret that as a coach. The Clip platform does it for us, and we can then make decisions about which thing we want to work on with the student, not just because the stats show us that this is the weakest link. Maybe the weakest link is not the thing that's going to have the biggest change in the player's score. The Clip does all of that heavy lifting for us rather than us having to do it. So just a couple of things from a coach's perspective I wanted to share with you this morning. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming out and listening to the presentation. Questions?
There have to be questions. We've done a number of these, and I'm certain with the resources we've got here, now's the time to do that, to ask those questions. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering about ease of use for your students. Like, is it something that they have to look back and track, or is it something that tracks them as they play, or how does that work?
You have options depending on what technology the student is using. So if they're using Arcos at the moment, it's already linked to the platform, so they can link their two accounts and that stuff will load automatically for them. There are other platforms coming, other associations coming.
Yeah, and I probably should defer to Chris, but I'll tell you from the standpoint of, we have a number of integrations into the platform already, relationships with TrackMan, Foresight, Garmin watches, obviously Actos grips. We have some of the players that are on the platform that use shot by shot and some of these other on-course data captures. Because of the collaborative nature, and hopefully this sort of answers your question, because of the collaborative nature of Clip with PGA professionals, it was clear that a more concise and yet easy to enter. I bet if I ask you to raise your hand, you don't need to, but virtually everybody in here that has students, the biggest challenge you got is getting them, if they're using technology, to load data. Getting them to provide you the answers to the questions you need answered to be able to help them. So Clip has introduced and is now part of the platform, the package, a thing called Clip Capture. And it's an on-course manual capture system. It takes between 5 and 7 minutes after a round of golf to enter it through your, Chris would say, your mobile. We call it our cell phone. But so it's really easy to use. So all of those aggregations of data are in process. There are 29 technologies that Clip is in conversations with about formalizing relationships. So you can tell that they're reaching out, and we like to use the term, we're agnostic to the other technologies. The two things that Clip is not trying to do is replace anybody's launch monitor systems or data, certainly not trying to replace coaches. Clip works best, and it only works, when it's collaborative with you as a coach. It is your expertise as a teacher. It is your knowledge of the student. It is your ability to orchestrate a plan for them to get better that is enhanced by what you learn from the data that Clip presents. Quick story. Bruce Hepler, the coach at Georgia Tech, the first time he looked at this, his reaction was, thank you. This takes the personal indictment of one of my players out of the process. He said, if I follow one of my players on the course for a round, and I notice that he's missing everything from 4 to 6 feet on the green, and after the round I go to him and I say, you know, I walked 18 holes with you, you're missing everything from 4 to 6 feet. The kid goes, oh my God, coach just busted me about missing putts. Now that kid goes to the other members on the team and goes, hey, coach, anything to you about missing 4 to 6 putts? Now Bruce says, I can bring a totally objective set of data and say, these are your numbers, this is you, this is what you've done. The IMG Academy was enthralled for the same reason, because they're having to have a lot of conversations with parents of students as to why that student may not be getting better. And you kind of take the opinion out of it and you bring them objective data. So those are important parts, but yes, all of these things are in relationships that automatically go from one account into the Clip account. It's a pretty simple process. And then others will be that the students will need to do. Let me touch on just a second. Any other questions real quick? Let's talk about, yes ma'am.
What did the students see versus what the coaches see?
Chris, I'm gonna let you know that.
I mean, virtually the same thing in terms of what, for example, David Ford will see this, but obviously you don't have to go into that detail. As we said before, you can stay on that main dashboard, which just has very sort of high-level information, trying to sort of abstract from all the detail in terms of the actual shot-by-shot and different player qualities, which you can track through time, and it's very straightforward. You only have 5 numbers to track, right? It can be very simple, or if they want to and they like going into the data, they can go right into this and look at the pane on the right, where you get into a lot of detail about exactly what's happening in this particular part of their game. The only distinction between what the coach sees and what the player sees is that team dashboard that I showed you. Obviously, as a coach, you have lots of relationship with all your players, and that sort of organizational dashboard, obviously the player wouldn't see. But everything else is sort of common between the two.
From a student perspective, one of the things that my students have said to me they enjoy the most is that watch a work on section. You know, they enter the data and it's like, well, I've got all this data in it, but what's it telling me? And then Clip sums it up very nicely for them, just by having that watch a work on section. In terms of entering data, if you don't have the technology, if your students don't have the technology and they're entering the rounds manually, you've got 2 options. You can do a light version, if you will, or a more detailed version. So if you've got players that are high scores, older, maybe don't want to go into that much in the weeds, you can also just get to do the light version, and you still get some really good data from it without having to go too deep. And then you can go to the deeper version if you want to. It takes a few minutes longer to get to that round.
Derek, when you get done with a lesson, and you go to put the data in there, import videos, like ease of doing that, and can it be done via phone?
Yes.
So you're doing most of it on your phone, or you do it on the desktop?
So I did one just over the weekend. So I am using OnForm at the moment for my video analysis on an iPad. I did the voiceover on there, saved it on OnForm, exported it from OnForm into my photos on my iPad, and then moved it from there directly into the Clip profile for the student.
Any other questions? I asked Chris to bring this back up because I wanted to again point out the differentiation, obviously, between the Clipped platform, Clipped technology, and everything else that we've all seen before. And this is what we call that language of Clipped. Player quality, shot quality. When we, through history, have talked about students we have and members at a club that may talk about both being a 10 handicap. You know that no 10 handicappers are exactly alike. One might drive the ball great and can't hit a green, but makes putts. One can't find a fairway, but has a great short game and end up with the same scores. This language of Clip that is the shot quality and player quality, we believe in time will be something that even students will gamify, because they'll start to talk to each other about, hey, Janet, I saw on your Clip that you can share, I saw that you're now at 83, and I'm at 89, and how did we get there? And I just think it's a conversation thing that we're seeing with more keen interest of students in technology. So, any other questions?
Cost.
Great. I was wondering when somebody would get to that. We have a model that we will unveil to you shortly that will show that if you are a coach, an instructor, you would pay $50 a month to have a Clipped account for yourself, to see all your students. Students would pay $25 a month. There's a difference. You add 10, you onboard 10 students onto your coaching platform, yours goes from 50 to 25, and you go, when you add 20 students, or a total of 20 students, you pay nothing. Now, I would think most of us would have 20 students we could get onto this platform to be able to do that, and the students have the option of paying quarterly or annually. If they do, there's discounts. It's a subscription model, but it's certainly affordable in the scheme of what I think a lot of other subscription situations are. But I really see this as the very best opportunity for you as coaches to differentiate yourselves I'm going to go back in history again. When video first came out, not only was it a great diagnostic tool for all of us to use in teaching, you know, we were able to say, oh, by the way, I use video in my lessons. It's a marketing strategy. And oh, by the way, I charge more for my lessons because I use video. I believe that as a coach, as an instructor, as a PGA teacher, this platform makes all of us look smarter, makes all of us look like we're have more ability and more expertise. But again, I'm going to leave you with the thing I said earlier, which I believe is the most important part of this. It is the partnership between a technology and a coach that makes it work. Any other questions? Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege as a PGA member. I'm sorry, yes ma'am.
Yeah, I had a question. When you go into what you work on when all this data, is there a way where you assign certain drills or things that the players have to work on based on the data you see? How does that?
Yes, and I mean, Chris, you want to go ahead and answer?
Yeah, to coming very soon. We have, as John mentioned, we have this companion capture app which has not only on-course capture but off-course with a set of tests and drills. And very soon that will be coming into that part of the platform where you can very easily recommend these things. But for the moment, yeah, it will be a process of you as the coach looking at what to work on with the player and then identifying from the off-course capture system which of those drills you can most applicable. And then it's about that monitoring process going forward via recording those activities.
Again, thank you to, yes ma'am.
On the coaches and player profiles, how detailed could you make your notes for each student?
Yeah, there's within the activities screen that he showed you, there's opportunity for you to journal, as we call it. You know, you can put all the notes in there you want. Again, you can capture it. You can do this via long distance. That's another whole plus to the clip thing. And if you're somebody that's involved in collegiate golf, or even high school golf for that matter, you can save a coach a lot of time in recruiting because they can look at a player's profile. Clift is also a partner sponsor of the Golf Coaches Association of America and the Women's Golf Coaches Association. We're sponsors of both of those. So we're deep into this from both the collegiate level and also from the PGA section, the PGA professional level. So, any other questions? Yes.
Shot, where you had Sunnyvale and East Lake. Are the other courses all together in here or
It doesn't work for any course it doesn't matter what course you play, those algorithms still are able to work out the shot qualities.
So those courses,
those are just a couple of examples.
but those courses are preloaded so that you know the difficulty as you show?
So when it comes to recording via the capture tool or via other sources, we have a means of matching the name of the course that you input with our database. So yes, we have a large database of courses.
Thanks. I know we've run over time, but again, we wanted to thank Scott Archer and the Southern Texas PGA section for having us here today. We thank you very much for being here today and allowing us to share something I'm sure you can tell we're very excited about. We hope you will be very excited about it. If you didn't pick up a card on the table out there, there are cards. Please contact us through the website. You can contact me directly in Atlanta. We will get you scheduled a demo if you want a full-blooded demo. We will get you an account at no charge for a short period of time for you to be able to play around with. We want your feedback. So thank you again for the time. It's a real privilege to be here. Thank you so much.